Hello there guys, and welcome to Is It Worth It, and today we'll be looking at Barrows. I've done 25 chests today, which means that my results won't be the most accurate, but I will be adding to them before I give a final verdict, so don't you worry. But today I'll just be giving you a rough insight into what I hope to do with these Is It Worth It videos, and where I hope to head with them. So, with Barrows, the one thing you're going to want to get a decent chest per hour rate is this Draken's Medallion that you can see me using here to teleport to Barrows, and you can also use it to teleport to Berg de Rot, which is right near the cave where you recharge it, so that's dead handy, so you'll probably want this to get the maximum chests per hour that you can. Okay, so let's begin by looking at my method that I use at Barrows. It's really quite straightforward. I use ancient magics with a melee weapon and a ranged weapon. In my case, CLS and chaotic crossbow, but whip and rune crossbow, etc, would work just as well. There's no point me going massively into the gear details because, to be honest, at Barrows it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's mainly reliant on the method and whether or not you have the Draken's Medallion on how many kills per hour you get. So I definitely recommend using ancients because it first and foremost means you don't need to bring prayer pots, which means you don't need to bank, which is even better if you don't have the Draken's Medallion. Admittedly, if you do have it like I do, it doesn't save you that much time, simply because you can bank really quickly with it anyway, because of course you can just teleport straight back. But still, I start off with Arim. That's the very first one I go for. In this particular run I've got him as my tunnel, which is a bit unfortunate, but it helps me explain why I have an enhanced Excalibur, so we'll stick with this one. I next go and kill Cariel. I turmoil and range pro with some of the prayer points that I have. I start every run with 4 prayer points for my house, which you hopefully saw at the beginning of this clip. And next I do all of the melee brothers, plus accuracy of course. Now all of these I do pretty much the same thing, so I'm not going to waste your time by showing you me killing all of them. I freeze them and then I just farcast. If I need to restore a bit of HP, I'll either flick on Soul Split if I have some prayer left, or I'll use Blood Barrage or Blood Blitz if I fancy saving some runes. So, moving on to accuracy, it's really quite easy. I just freeze him, flick on Turmoil, and then use my melee weapon once he starts praying mage. And then of course, he will eventually start praying melee again, there we are, after I hit him. And then of course it's just back to mage, so it's a really simple hybrid to take down accuracy, and you should have him done in no time really. And as I said, all of the other melee brothers, Darok, Verak, Guthan and Torag, I simply just freeze and farcast. Okay, so it's tunnel time, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. If you've never been to Barrows before whatsoever, do go look up a guide, because that's not what this is intended for, so it's purely looking at whether or not it's worth it. But if you do have Draken's Medallion, then you don't need to bother remembering the way from the chest room back to the tunnel room, simply because you just teleport out, recharge your prayer and teleport back. If however you don't have the Draken's Medallion, you will want to remember the way you came in so that you can then exit the same way, otherwise you'll have to walk all the way back, which is obviously a massive time waste. Since I've been mentioning it so much, it's probably also worth just noting that if you don't have Draken's Medallion but you want to get it, it's from the Branches of Darkmire quest, which isn't actually too tricky to complete. It's maybe an hour or two, and the medallion's really worth it, so I definitely recommend, if you plan on doing a lot of Barrows, to get the medallion. But if we go back to earlier in the video when I said it was actually quite fortunate that on the run I've decided to record, I got Arim in my tunnel. Now, this is where Enhanced Excalibur comes in, because if I get Arim or Cariel, then I tend to use my Enhanced Excalibur, because with the other 5 you can just freeze them and farcast even in the tunnel, but of course with Arim and Cariel you can't, and if they feel like it, they can hit you for a lot of damage, so it's just an insurance policy really bringing Enhanced Excalibur, but it's definitely worth it. So after you've looted the chest, what you want to do is you want to teleport to your house, recharge your prayer, and then head straight back to Barrows with your Draken's Medallion. This saves prayer pots, money, time, everything basically. Let's now move on to the 25 chests that I actually looted. Now people say that the chance of getting an item from the chest is 1 in 16, so working around that, in my 25 chests I should get 1 or 2 items. In this particular case I'm going to ruin the surprise for you, I'm afraid. I get 1, and it's a Torag's plate body. Now in terms of actual Barrows item rewards, a Torag's plate body is pretty mediocre, There are better ones, but there are also worse ones, like Aaron's coif, Carol's coif, the staff and the crossbow, etc. So it's actually probably quite a reasonable portrayal of what you can expect to get from 25 chests at Barrows. So finally, let's look at the actual profit or perhaps even loss made from these 25 chests. I use 115 blood runes, 237 death runes, 118 souls and 2,394 waters. Now of course that doesn't add up in terms of spellcasts if you do the calculations, but that's simply explained by the fact that you get blood runes and death runes from the Barrows chest when you loot it. So this was basically my net loss worth of runes. Okay, now looking at all of the rewards, they add up to 856.6k. That obviously doesn't include the blood runes and the death runes because I've taken those out of my costs. But when we minus 180k that we spent on supplies, we end up with 676k profit. And when you consider that that took me 3 hours to do, that's 225k per hour. Now I'm not going to lie, that is pretty pathetic, and when you factor in the extreme magics and the degradation on RMs and my chaotics, it's not even that much. So I would say, based on this evidence, Barrows is definitely not worth it, but like I say, only 25 chests, and I will be doing more in future to reach a more certain verdict. Now to put this into perspective, I plan on comparing all of these that I do in the Is It Worth It video series to Frost Dragons, which are well over 2 mil per hour. So this is 10 times slower, and it's actually slower than running bagged plants like I do in my R2R videos. So it's definitely not worth doing Barrows based on these 25 chests. Okay, so on to the final verdict after my first 25 chests. For cash, it scores only 1 out of 5, I'm afraid, very poor for money making. In terms of fun, it's also extremely dull, the same surroundings, etc, etc, and to be honest, there's nothing really to challenge you to keep you interested, so I'm afraid that's another pretty poor 1 out of 5. However, it is very easy, so for ease it scores a healthy 4 out of 5, and another 4 out of 5 in the requirement, because they have very, very easy requirements to do Barrows. In fact, I don't actually think there are... Priest in Peril is perhaps the only requirement to do Barrows. So, in summary, it's a very easy, but not particularly fast money-making method, and personally, for people high level, even medium level, I wouldn't recommend it. But low level, knock yourself out, you might get lucky, you might get an Acrosay robe top or something similar. So that gives Barrows a total score of 6 out of 15. Now if you're wondering why it's only out of 15 and not 20, it's simply because I plan on ranking everything I do in this series against each other, and I think that if I use the requirements in the total score, then usually the best money making methods will suffer because they have the highest requirements, like for example Frost Dragons. They're pretty fast money, but the requirements would score only like 1, so that would push them down the table when actually they were one of the best methods. So I've decided not to include that in the total scores that I'll be ranking each method against each other on. Just to round this video off then, if you have any ideas for a Is It Worth It video that you'd like to see, such as perhaps solo co-op, etc, etc, then do please leave it as a comment and I'll see what I can do about that. But until next time guys, I'll see you later, take care and be aware.